Hello, Chester Elton.
Hey Tom, how you doing?
Good. Thank you so much, man, for joining me. Very, very nice to see you, albeit from a safe social distance. I hope you're doing well. I want to just give a quick introduction to you. First of all, thanks for being my friend. You have been a big influence, which we'll touch on. But just in brief, you are a best-selling author, over 1.5 million copies worldwide of your several books. You've been a very influential voice in the workplace in a number of areas: leadership, culture, gratitude. You've studied and researched, which have included nearly 1 million working folks, and have discovered what I call some of the proven secrets behind high performance cultures and teams. Gosh, I've seen you all over TV, including CNN and MSNBC, and even on 60 Minutes and NPR. You and your colleagues are at an organization called Culture Works, and you're impacting companies around the globe. So anyway, that was a bit long-winded. I could go on, but thank you very much for joining.
Oh, thanks for that lovely introduction. It is interesting. Sometimes people read that stuff off, and I think, I'd like to meet that guy. that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, one thing I failed to mention is probably what's always most noticeable about you is that you always have a little bit of orange on.
Yeah. Adrian Gostick's my co-author for 2 decades now. We've been reading and researching and writing about culture, leadership, teams, and in particular gratitude. And our seminal book, The Carrot Principle, kind of really launched us. And so carrots, generally speaking, are orange, and it's become our go-to color and our little mascot, Garrett the Carrot. So there you have it.
So just very quickly, I want to say how I have been through many times.
All in. Yeah.
And many of your other books, but this is a very special one for me because on November 25th, 2013, that's when we met. And I want to thank you. And I don't think I ever thanked you for putting me on the cover. I feel like I'm that little blue monkey right
Yeah, there you go. Who knew? Who knew?
So let's jump in. Can you talk about how teams can differentiate?
Well, it's a great question because teams are always looking to differentiate. They're always looking to excel and to pop up above more than anything. And, I love Peter Drucker and a lot of the stuff that he did where he said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And so appropriate that we'd hold up the book All In. That was our book around how the best leaders create a culture of belief that drives big results. And I think, more than ever, this having a noble cause, creating a culture where people believe what they do matters, they make a difference. And I always add, and when they make a difference, it was noticed and celebrated. It's more important than ever. People are looking for those noble causes. They're looking for not just organizations and companies that produce great products and services. They're interested in people that are doing good things and that are contributing to their communities, that take care of their employees, that really do, through their work, make the world a little better place. Those are the people we want to associate, the brands we want to associate with, the people we want to do business with, and the companies we want to work for.
Has that changed in the last few decades? I mean, where there's an increased emphasis and an increased desire for people to do meaningful work?
Oh, without question. And a lot of it has to do with the up and coming generations. The millennials, Gen Z, or if you're Canadian like I am, it's Gen Z, which you have to admit sounds cooler. They are very mission driven. They're less about the stuff. They're more about experiences. They care more about the environment. They care more about basically their fellow men and women. And that drives them to look at companies that say, 10% of all we earn is going to go to Habitat for Humanities, or for every pair of shoes you buy, we're going to give a pair of shoes to someone who doesn't have any shoes in South America. So those kinds of things, I think, without question, it's the younger generation that has driven that. And it's a great place to be. I mean, why not? Why not? Whether you want to call it compassionate capitalism or whatever, to say, look, we're doing really well and we want to take some of that wealth, some of that goodness, and we want to redistribute it. So without question, the last couple of decades in particular, I would even say the last, 5 to 7 years, it's become really important.
If I think back to companies in the 80s and 90s, there really weren't, or earlier, there really weren't that many that sort of had a big mission behind them other than to grow and prosper and drive revenue, right?
Yeah,
And
make
then,
more money, right?
yeah, make more money. And then I remember some of the initial companies that were doing that. There was a company like Esprit, and I remember how they were big on culture and treating their employees. And then, of course, Patagonia,
Right, right.
organizations like that really were different. And then Tom's Shoes and companies but now it seems like there's a lot of organizations. That seems like it's got to be driven by culture, right? By leadership. Can organizations shift along that continuum and move more towards being mission driven?
Oh, absolutely. Often it happens when the leader changes. You say, what's the quickest way to change a culture? Well, change faces, and when the face changes at the top, culture always shifts. Well, almost always, depending on what their succession plan is. So yeah, absolutely. You can pivot and you can become more noble, you might say, or more giving, more altruistic in what you do. And I think companies have had to do that in a lot of ways because they want to attract this new and really smart talent that are that way, and they want their values to match up with the company's values. And so, if you're really committed to the environment and you're being interviewed by a company that clearly has no interest,
Right.
that is looking, to kill the spotted owl, you're not going to join that company, And so companies have figured out very quickly that noble cause is what really energizes people. See, you talk about the difference between, good teams and extraordinary teams. The difference to me is always the emotional connection. I get like what we do and how we do it. Everybody should be able to tell you that. Why you do it is the big differentiator. And if you solve the why, like if you really have a why that connects with you emotionally, then when COVID hits or a hurricane hits or a merger hits or whatever, it gives you that emotional resilience to push through and to keep going. And so, yeah, it's more than ever, people are looking at the whole person, the whole employee, and the whole organization. Why do we do what we do? How are we making the world a better place? How can we make it better for our employees? I'll tell you a perfect example. Right now, we're doing a real-time study on an really a fascinating company called Texas Roadhouse Restaurants. Have you ever been to a Texas Roadhouse restaurant?
I have.
Yeah, I mean, a party every night, right? It's peanuts on the floor, it's loud music, it's, sports on the thing, it's ice cold margaritas and fall off the bone ribs, right? Well, you may not know this. They have 600 restaurants. They have 70,000 employees. And they went from 5% to 10% takeout revenue to having to go to 100% takeout. Well, 3 million people in restaurants lost their jobs within 4 weeks. 3 million. Not one of them worked for Texas Roadhouse. They didn't lay off one person. They shifted right to the curb, to the parking lot. Within 4 weeks, they were profitable. So how did that happen when so many other restaurants just said, well, until there's a vaccine, I guess we're out of luck? It's because for 20 years, their founder, Kent Taylor, said, look, first and foremost, our people are our number one priority. Secondly, are our customers. And thirdly is our community. And so their noble cause shifted from just, making enough money to stay open to say, you know what, we need to feed America.
Yeah.
And how are we going to do that? We're going to put together family packs. That's a tremendous value because money's going to be tight for a lot of people. So how can we feed families at a really reasonable rate? How can we keep our employees safe, right? They immediately ordered gloves and goggles and Purell and masks and everything and suited them all up, right? First and foremost, they kept their people working and they kept them safe, which kept their customers safe. And then they offered all these incredible values. They said, look, there's less meat in the grocery stores. So we're going to go from curb to grill. We're not going to cook it for you. We're just going to give it to you below market value so that you can have food for your family. Well, and think about it from the employee standpoint too, because the big thing about Texas Roadhouse is it's all It's all homemade stuff. Nothing's frozen, nothing's packaged. They make it all like if they're bread and everything. And the steaks are hand cut. So they've got meat cutters in every store. What's another way to keep them busy? Curb to grill, right? Get them, keep cutting those steaks. I mean, they're wonderful butchers. And to your point, a great big organization might have a tough time pivoting to do that. Texas Roadhouse, not a problem because they're so community centered and focused. They'd say, what's best for our communities? What's
Yeah. I mean, not only would they have a tough time doing it, but they wouldn't even come up with that idea because it's just outside of their realm.
See, Ken Taylor, which is an amazing study in leadership, really it is, because he really does care for his people. First thing he did is he said, look, I'm giving up my salary. It's going to go to employee support. In April, his executives gave up a month's worth of salary. They actually paid bonuses in April. They called it April Love. And while everybody else was still laying off people, they were hiring. And it's because they believed in their culture, they believed in each other, they believed in their communities. And for 20 years, that investment in that culture, when COVID hit, they could handle it. They could pivot. You know, Ken would always say, look, when things get a little crazy, I call my crazies because they're the guys already thinking outside of the box. My big dogs, right? And then I've got my rule followers and they're the puppies on the porch. I get my big dogs with my puppies and we move forward. And a lot of the stuff we're going to try isn't going to work and that's fine.
Yeah.
You know, let's get out there and let's do it. And they're incredibly energized. They're incredibly mission focused. They take care of each other, their customers, and their community. And is it any wonder that they're thriving while many others in their space are not, are cratering?
Yeah. There's probably some organizations that want to adopt the noble cause because it's good for business, but it rings hollow. I mean, I would think there's a danger of that.
Well, sure. And this is where leadership is so key. And you know this better than anybody, that the way a leader acts gives everyone else permission to act the same way. So, and people know when you don't mean it. You know, I mean, you know, when we were kids and dating and you know, we liked a girl, maybe not that much. And she said, I love you. We said, thank you. Right. Which is not the right answer.
That never happened to me.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So the point is that, yeah, it needs to come from the heart. People need to believe it. You can't just say it. You have to do it. And so back to our Texas Roadhouse example. He didn't just say that. The first thing he did was give up his salary. So the people knew he meant it. By the way, they knew he meant it anyway. The fact that he did that over and above just won over their hearts and minds immediately.
Yeah. Well, this wasn't a first time thing. This was decades of him being who he is.
Exactly. In fact, a good point. You know, previous to that, they'd set up what they call Andy's Outreach. Their mascot is this, you know, gun-toting cowboy hat armadillo, right? And so he's Andy the Armadillo. Well, Andy's Outreach is an employee fund so that if anybody in the organization has an unexpected expense, whether there's a gap in their health care or it all started because one of their employees passed away unexpectedly and the family couldn't afford to pay for the funeral. And so the people rallied and paid that expense. Well, now it's institutionalized. And, you know, if they've got a waitress whose car's broken down and she needs a car to get to work, well, she can petition the committee and they'll go pay for transportation. They'll pay for an unexpected heating bill. So you're right. So for over 20 years, there was already this culture of we take care of each other, right? We look out for each other. And so when it came to the point where it said, look, we've got to shut down the restaurants, they say, well, not us. We're not shutting down. We'll figure it out.
We'll figure a way forward. What are some ways organizations can develop a healthy and a robust culture?
Well, we talk about, you know, we've got the all-in roadmap, which you're familiar with, is at the core is engage, enable, and energize your people. So the engagement piece is, yeah, I get discretionary effort. The enable is you've got to give them the tools to do their job, and the energy comes back to this noble cause. You know, you've really got to figure out what it is that makes you tick. And if you really want to develop that healthy culture, I honestly believe you have to start with how do we take care of our people? Because if you don't do that, nothing else matters. So what is it that our people need? You know, do they need more training? Do they need more or better equipment? Do they need different products and services? We started our new book, Leading with Gratitude, with a story of WD-40. Love their culture, always have a can handy. You can never have too much WD-40, right?
Yeah.
Well, their CEO there, Gary Ridge, talks about a tribal culture, that we're not coworkers or employees or teammates. We're part of a tribe. He says, why a tribe? Because a tribe, we hunt together, we feed each other, we take care of each other, and we cheer for each other. So really interesting, in the last recession, he says, I'm visiting all our facilities, and I kept getting the same question. And it was this: Gary, are you okay? And he'd say, yeah, I'm okay. I said, no, really, are you okay? He says, he kept coming up again and again. So finally I called my wife. I said, look, do I look unwell? Like, do I give off a sick vibe, you know? And she said, Gary, think about it. They're not asking, are you okay? They're asking, are we okay? Because they're hearing about companies that are closing and laying off and so on. So my favorite quote from Gary is, he says, it occurred to me, we shouldn't waste a good crisis, right? So he said, look, I told everybody, we're not going to be laying anybody off. We're in good financial situation. In fact, we're going to invest in you. What do you need more of? Do you need leadership training? Do you need more in research and development and so on? Because when we come out of this, and we will, we want to be stronger than ever. Well, Gary took WD-40 from a $280 million company to a $2.8 billion company. And the catalyst for that was the crisis, was the economic crisis. So once you go through that, you know, first thing, what did he do? He reassured his people, we're okay, you're going to be okay, we're going to invest, let's move forward. We'll come out of this stronger than ever. So yeah, to me, step one is, how are your people doing? And then step two is, how can we better serve our customers? What do they need? Classic story. A good friend of mine, Martin Lindstrom, who's this marketing genius out of Australia. Last recession, automotive, right? Nobody's buying cars. So the American dealers said, well, what do people need? Well, they need lower prices. So we'll slash our prices. Kia said, what our customers really want to know is, if they lose their jobs, what do they do about their car payment? They don't want it to impact their credit rating. And they don't want to be known, they don't want a tow truck pulling up in front of their house, holding onto their car. So what Kia did is they said, well, you know, we'll offer our normal incentives. Here's what we'll do. In the next 3 years, if you lose your job, just bring the car back. No questions asked. We got you covered. I mean, how great is that?
Right.
What they wanted was an assurance that they wouldn't get embarrassed, or it wouldn't be a problem, and that stress, right? So really interesting. So 5 years after, right, Martin goes back to the CEO of Kia at the time, and he said, by the way, really curious, how many people actually returned their cars? And you understand, they sold, what, hundreds of thousands of cars, right? What's your guess? Let's say it was 100,000 cars under that.
Well, I'm going to give you a percentage wise. I would say over 5 years, I would say maybe 15%.
5 cars. Like literally 5 cars, not like 1% or 5% or 0.5%. It was 5 cars. and what, you know, and the goodwill that they got from knowing what their customers really needed was assurance, and somebody that had their back made all the difference. Isn't that fascinating?
That's amazing.
There are many companies that have done it really well. American Express did it really well. They came out to their people and said, look, nobody's going to lose their job because of COVID. Now you understand that, you know, when they whiteboard crisis, they say, what do we do if we're down 5%, 10%, or 15%? Nobody at American Express said, what do we do if it goes down 45%, which is what has happened. He said, you know, nobody predicted that. And yet, even at that, we're going to be fine, and we'll come out of this. So I think there are companies that, like WD-40, like American Express, like Texas Roadhouse, that have taken the crisis and have used it to galvanize and to bring everybody together. I'm with you. What should have happened and what could have happened was that, not just on a national scale, on a global scale, this should have been something that brought everybody together, right? Like, you think about, you and I kind of live in the same neighborhood. Do you remember what happened after 9/11? It was remarkable how people came together.
And just as a quick comment on that, I was in the towers twice every day, and I was there on September 10th the night
Wow.
before at 11 at night. And I'm lucky I wasn't there the morning. And I had two friends and two neighbors who died. So yeah, that had a big impact on me for a long time. But to your point, the world sort of empathized and turned out and showed support for uh, for the tragedy.
For New York, for Americans, I never thought I would ever see a baseball game at Fenway Park with the hated Boston Red Sox, where after the game was over, they played New York, New York. I mean, the country came together. People came together, Hurricane Katrina, whatever, the people came together. And it's remarkable to me that in our country, at least, by the way, other countries have done it very well. Taiwan has done it very well. Singapore's done it where people really rallied around. And for whatever reason, it's caused a bigger rift when it should have been exactly the opposite. And I'm with you. I think it comes down to leadership. You're gonna look at, some states are gonna do it really well, some states are not. It really depends. Who's your governor? Who's your mayor? And I think right now is a wonderful time to pause as leaders and say, what will I be remembered for? What kind of legacy am I leaving through the COVID crisis? How did I lead? How will I be remembered? And by the way, not just as a leader, right? As a coworker, as a parent, as a partner, as a friend. You say, look, great leaders are forged in hard times. And these are hard times. Who are the great leaders stepping up? Are there leaders that, the buck stops here. This is going to be my responsibility. Here's what we're going to do. Rally around the flag, rally around the cause, whatever it is. And yeah, we're going to make mistakes along the way. Believe me that I have nothing but your best interest at heart. We want, we want to save lives. Instead of deflection and blame, and it's not my fault, and somebody else should have done it, and so on. The leaders that we will revere 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 30 years from now, are going to be those leaders that said, when COVID hit, they stepped up, they showed up, they took responsibility. And there's going to be companies that we will write about. And by the way, I honestly think Texas Roadhouse is going to be one of them. Yeah. I mean, what other restaurant, like I get companies that don't lay people off for whatever reason. Restaurants? Come on.
Right.
Restaurants, they all laid off everybody.
Right. 70,000.
He's not rewriting restaurant history. He's rewriting business history. This is how you do it. This is the culture you need. And so I think there's going to be wonderfully remarkable stories that are told. And we're going to look back and say, those guys, like you say, could have done better.
Yeah. Can you talk about the importance of gratitude, how it impacts organizations?
Yeah, it's so interesting, Tom, that 20 years looking at cultures, leaders, teams, and the whole bit, the common thread that goes through everything is that they cheered for each other, that they were grateful for each other. And what bothers me always is leaders that say, oh, that's a soft skill, it's a nice to have. Right. And I say, you couldn't be more wrong. It's an absolute hard skill, and it's an absolute must have. People say, yeah, but people take advantage. You perceived as soft. And that's why we spent some time, and we used in the book Alan Mulally, who's the guy that saved the Ford Motor Company through the last recession. There is no one that is more demanding of his people, that holds them more accountable than Alan Mulally. And there's also no one that puts his people more front and center and loves his people up and celebrates their success the whole way. It's so interesting when you get a chance to spend some time with Alan. He's this Midwestern, engineer. And he says, my management philosophy starts with, it's all about your people. Love them up. Love them up. It's a guy, the Ford Motor Company. This is, the automotive industry, sharp elbows, eat what you kill and kill or be killed. And he's showing up and he's hugging people and high-fiving, and he's saying, look, the only way we're going to get through this is if we love each other up. We support each other, and we celebrate all those little wins along the way so we can build momentum to get to where we are. And If you want to read about it, his book that was written about him called American Icon, How Alan Mulally Saved the Ford Motor Company. It's brilliant. And it starts and in the middle and it ends with how he values people. So for me, gratitude is everything. It literally is everything. If you cannot have a healthy culture, you cannot have a healthy relationship where you don't have gratitude front and center, because it's what allows us to step out of ourselves, be of service, be altruistic, and care about someone else. You know, I love the quote. We got this from Chad Pennington, of all people. You know, the Jets quarterback, and I'm a longtime Jets fan, and the reason you know that is because I admitted it. You know, it's been a long time since the Jets have really won anything of any significance. And he said, you know, people that express gratitude, they don't think less of themselves, right? It's not soft or taking it. They think of themselves less. And aren't those the kind of people we want to work for, that think more about others than themselves? Why do we revere Mother Teresa? Because she thought more of other people. You know, why do we revere Gandhi? Why do we revere these great leaders that took us through hard times? Because their mission was to serve other people and make other people's lives better. Well, does that translate into business? Absolutely it does. I think the great leaders you worked for, you would walk on hot coals for them.